driven by pure lust. Frighteningly beautiful. Men drop at her feet. Turned on, or scared off. BloodRayne, rated M for mature.
Welcome back to the channel, folks. AAA gaming these days feels like it's stuck in a loop. Massive budgets, constant delays, and studios needing to sell like a bazillion copies just to break even. And even if your game does succeed, there's still a good chance you could lose your job. It's exhausting. The slow collapse of AAA gaming makes me miss the AA scene more than ever. Those games haven't disappeared completely, but they're a lot harder to come by now. Back then, AA games didn't have the big budgets or the big name studios behind them. They were shorter, cheaper, and barely marketed. Maybe you saw one in a magazine ad, or maybe a friend told you about one at school. Most of the time, you just stumble across one at GameStop, or grab a random rental from Blockbuster to mess around with over the weekend. They had limitations, sure, but that just made them weirder, riskier, and more creative. You'd see some strange cover art and think, this might actually be cool. A lot of those games didn't turn into franchises, and most aren't remembered today, but they usually gave you your money's worth. And every now and then, you'd hit the jackpot and find something truly special. One of those AA gems is what we're talking about today, BloodRayne. The game dropped in October of 2002, developed by Terminal Reality, and published by Majesco Entertainment. It stars Rayne, a sexy half-human, half-vampire assassin, working for the mysterious group known as the Brimstone Society. The game takes place in a gritty, supernatural version of the late 1930s, with Rayne slicing up monsters, Nazis, and trying to stop some creepy occult disaster. She's got dual blades, a variety of era-appropriate guns, and vampire powers to back her up. Back in the early 2000s, female-led action games weren't exactly common, so taking a page out of Laura Croft's book, BloodRayne leaned into their lead sexuality to sell the game. Rayne's whole design really embodies that stylish 2000s edge you'd see in Blade or The Matrix. But just like Lara, Rayne isn't just eye candy, and is a decently written character in her own right. And while BloodRayne didn't break new ground for action games, it nailed what it was going for, and gave us one of gaming's most iconic sex symbols in the process. So let's take a look and see how the game holds up over 20 years later. As a heads up, I'm playing the Terminal Cut version of BloodRayne on PC for this video, a remastered/updated port of the original, with some updated visuals, proper widescreen support, and improved lighting and effects, along with full modern controller support. As far as I can tell, this is the definitive version of the game, and the revamped version on consoles is basically the same thing, just with a different name for some reason. Now, let's get into it. Before BloodRayne became its own thing, it actually started out as a sequel to Terminal Reality's earlier horror action game, Nocturne. Released in 1999 and published by a gathering of developers, in Nocturne you played as the Stranger, an agent working for a secret government agency called Spook House, who hunt down supernatural threats. I haven't played it myself yet, but from what I've seen and read, it looks really interesting. It might be worth diving into for a video someday. Terminal Reality originally planned to follow it up with Nocturne 2, but when Gathering of Developers shut down, the team didn't want to hand the Nocturne IP over to a new publisher. So instead, they repackaged the whole project into something new, what would eventually become BloodRayne. While the name and branding change, a lot of the original DNA stayed intact. Rayne is clearly modeled after Nocturne's half-vampire operative, Svetlana Lepescu. The levels set in Castle Gstaad, the monster hunting organization, now called the Brimstone Society, and the pulp horror tone all feel like spiritual holdovers from Nocturne's world. So no, BloodRayne isn't officially part of the Nocturne series, but it came directly out of the same creative space. And without that first game and fear of what would happen to the IP, BloodRayne as a series wouldn't even exist.
Damn bloodsuckers.
Careful with your relatives.
They should have more sense. Thanks for dragging me out here. I just love the water.
You're only half vampire. A dip might hurt, but it won't kill you.
Sort of sticking a finger in my eye doesn't mean I have to do it.
No time for pleasantries, just like your half-sister.
I'm just confident in my abilities.
So am I. But this is your first assignment for the Brimstone Society, so everything must go according to plan. What do we know so far?
Next, let's talk about our femme fatale lead, Rayne. She's a Dampier / Daywalker. Half human, half vampire. You know, kind of like Blade or Alucard. She's got most of a vampire's powers without the usual baggage. Rayne can tolerate sunlight to an extent, and is unaffected by holy objects like crosses. She is hurt by water though, a reference to folklore that vampires can't cross running water like rivers. In a similar vein to Blade, her conception wasn't a happy one, as her vampire father Kagan raped her mother to conceive Rayne. Despite the traumatic experience, Rayne's mother and her family would still raise and love her. Everything was going fine until Kagan came back into the picture and murdered Rayne's mom, along with her entire human family. It's not explained until the sequel, but he did it to isolate Rayne, to make sure she had no one left but him. That was his way of controlling the vampire children he created. Cut out their humanity so they'd follow him without question. But Rayne wasn't the type to be controlled. As a teenager, she went on a rampage across Europe hunting vampires in search of her father. Her actions caught the attention of the Brimstone Society. Seeing her potential and hatred for her own kind, they sent her an invitation to join them. By the time you start the game, she's going through the final part of her training, but she's already proven herself a capable assassin. She also enjoys her job quite a bit, maybe a little too much, as Rayne clearly loves cutting her enemies to pieces, even flirting with some before taking them out. Her voice actress, Laura Bailey, who you know from all these games on screen, captures that vampire seductress energy perfectly.
What is your name, Fräulein?
Why bother with names? This won't be more than a one-night stand.
Rayne isn't a complete horny sociopath though, as she can be emotional, vulnerable, and has enough compassion to avoid creating civilian casualties, a sign that her upbringing helped retain her humanity. She does lean into her vampire roots though, not just through her powers but how she's dressed too, cause Rayne is pretty easy on the eyes. Red leather corset that shows off the goods, sky-high stiletto boots, crimson hair, dark lipstick. Damn. No wonder she ended up in Playboy. It's a fan-servicey look, but one that isn't too over the top or distracting, and works well with the hypersexuality you expect from a vampire. Terminal velocity kind of lampshades the obvious sex appeal to Rayne's design, and she does have jiggle physics, and you can input a code to increase the size of her boobs. But the game's camera doesn't actually let you ogle Rayne during gameplay, only in cutscenes. I'm not going to pretend Rayne is one of the best female leads ever written, but like Lara Croft, she's not defined by her sexuality, and there's enough layers to her where you can appreciate Rayne as a character.
Shh. There's one. Use your aura sense to see it in the dark. Easy prey, if you want it. He's a big meal. Look how bright his aura is. He has no idea we're here.
He's not panicking or hurt. Yet.
This one's yours. Take him down or grab a bite to eat.
At its core, BloodRayne is a straightforward action hack and slash. Using her dual-arm blades, Rayne will slash, slice, and tear through anything in her way. Her kills can be impressively gory, lopping off limbs, cutting enemies in half, or just dicing them into little chunks. While visually impressive, her attacks are pretty basic and shallow. There's no real combo system or chainable moves. Just smash the attack button until whatever you're fighting is dead. As the story progresses, her base melee damage scales up at key moments, making her attacks feel a bit more impactful. But the core loop never really changes. The few different attacks you get, like a corkscrew kick and jumping slash, have their uses, but don't add any strategy to combat. It's simple and a bit mindless, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having fun. Rayne does have access to a full arsenal of guns to make up for the melee. These range from pistols and submachine guns, to shotguns, rifles, grenades, and a couple special weapons. Firearms are split into 4 categories: light, heavy, throwables, and special. But in practice, you're rarely forced to think strategically about which to use. Outside of some more powerful throwables or one-off weapons, I never felt like I needed to switch to a specific type. You can just pick up whatever you find, unload it into the nearest monster or Nazi, and it'll usually get the job done. There's a loose sense of variety, but no real incentive to experiment. It's just an option for when you want to keep your distance, are fighting an enemy that deflects your melee attacks, or is out of reach of your dual blades. Outside of a few encounters, you're not really pushed to conserve your ammo either, since it's everywhere, so you can happily unload everything you've got without issue. At the very least, you do have some vampire powers at your disposal to go along with the basic combat. Rayne's vampire powers lean more towards practical and supportive than flashy over-the-top super moves. First, our sexy Daywalker can self-heal by feeding on humanoid victims. She'll pounce on them and can feed from the front or back, with the added benefit of using her victim as a meat shield. Since there's no health packs, this is the only way to stay alive. While you'll never be short on bodies to feed on, Rayne's feeding is a little slow, and her meat shield isn't too reliable depending on the amount of enemies around you, so you could end up losing all the health you just drained if you're not careful. To assist with feeding, Rayne's also given a harpoon that lets her reel in a target, knock them down, and start feasting on them. I'll be honest, I feel like the harpoon is kinda pointless. It doesn't have a long enough range to justify using it over having Rayne run in instead. That, and you're completely vulnerable when feasting this way, since you aren't using a target as a shield. Her next ability is Aura Vision. It acts like a mix of night vision and detective mode, letting Rayne spot enemies through walls, highlight environmental objects you can interact with, and it guides you towards your next objective, usually shown as a glowing blue orb floating in the distance. It's simple, but it helps keep you on track when the level layout gets a little maze-like, and it avoids breaking the immersion by sticking a compass or arrow on screen on where to go next. Next, she's got Dilated Perception, Rayne's version of bullet time. It slows down the world, letting her dodge bullets, evade traps, and react to fast-moving enemies more easily. She's technically not moving faster, it's just her brain processing everything in hyperspeed. Which means Rayne slows down too, so it's more about control and precision than landing flashy hits. Still, it's a fun way to get out of a tight spot. Then there's Extruded Vision, which gives Rayne telescopic vision, letting her zoom in like a sniper scope on any firearm she's holding. Sounds cool on paper, but it's probably her least useful ability. Most long-range enemies aren't a big threat, the game's auto-aim is generous enough where you don't need to zoom in to shoot, and Rayne can usually close the distance with a few jumps for a melee attack. Aside from 1 or 2 sections where it's semi-required, you'll probably forget it exists. Finally, there's Blood Rage, your typical super mode. The more enemies you kill, the faster the meter fills. Once activated, Rayne goes into a frenzy, moving faster, doing more damage as she slices and dices. It's insanely overpowered, and you'll melt through most enemies in seconds, bosses included. It doesn't completely break the game, as there's a couple enemies tanky enough to survive it, or have some gimmick Blood Rage can't overcome, but maybe if it took longer to fill up the meter, it could prevent spamming Blood Rage to solve all your problems. If I'm being honest, while I think the shooting and melee combat in BloodRayne is serviceable, her abilities are pretty lacking. Maybe if her Dilated Perception worked more like Max Payne's bullet time, or if the harpoon could be worked into combo attacks, things would have stood out a little more.
What's that mound by the telephone pole?
What is it?
It was human. Might be remains from the final stages of the disease, but there's something not quite right about it. Let's check inside. Seems like somebody made their last stand here. Grab some guns if you want.
As you can probably tell by the length of this video, I'm not going to go through my recent playthrough beat by beat, mainly because the story is fairly simple and short, with cutscenes that actually progress the plot few and far between. Instead, I'll go over the general clip notes of each act, along with a couple of noticeable encounters before wrapping things up with my closing thoughts. We start with Rayne on her first mission in Louisiana, getting field training from her mentor Mintz, who is also a Dampier, I guess. The Brimstone Society sends them to investigate a swamp town where the locals are coming down with an unknown disease that's slowly turning them into mutants. HQ wants Rayne and Mintz to track down the source of the disease to prevent it from spreading outside the area. Turns out these weird little spider parasite things are responsible, and according to a local, they were summoned by a voodoo priestess trying to raise the mother of the underworld. All on behalf of some strange old German guy that came into town recently. After killing the parasites, clearing their nests, putting down the infected, and saving any survivors she can, Rayne's investigation hits a snag. First, her mentor Mintz gets gobbled up by a parasite, because she was distracted by a frog. Okay then. Second, all the survivors we've rescued end up getting killed. Well, shit. Following up on the lead of the voodoo priestess's last known location, Rayne heads out to the boat graveyard. Once she arrives, she faces off against a massive parasite called the Queen of the Underworld, which I promptly melt through using Blood Rage. After winning, Rayne finds a strange glowing rib inside the Queen's corpse. She pulls it out only for it to impale her and force itself into her body. Then, right afterwards, the mysterious German guy shows up. His name's Jurgen Wolf. He rips the artifact right out of Rayne and leaves her for dead, bringing an abrupt end to Act 1. After the swamp disaster in Louisiana, the game jumps ahead 5 years to 1938. Rayne's now a full-on agent for the Brimstone Society, and her assignment takes her to a Nazi base on the coast of Argentina. The Nazis have formed a secret occult division called the Gengeist Group, or GGG for short, led by none other than that asshole Jurgen Wolf. They're hunting down ancient relics tied to some powerful supernatural force, and it's Rayne's job to stop them. This section starts out promising. The shift from creepy swamp horror to industrial Nazi nightmare is a cool change of scenery. The Nazis are a bigger threat than the mutants from Act 1, with tougher elite officers that can block Rayne's melee attacks. But it drags a lot. You're sent all over this massive base, checking off a list of high-ranking GGG officers, but the overwhelming majority of them are just one-off nobodies. It starts to feel more like errands than a mission. Go here, kill this guy, go there, flip a switch, now go back and kill someone else. The level layout doesn't change much between encounters, and the enemies start to blur together after a while. On top of that, you're now dealing with a new threat, the Damites. These things are floating demonic heads with their spinal cords still dangling behind them, and they regularly possess the Nazis who unleash them. At first, they had a nice bit of enemy variety, but they wear out their welcome fast. They're tough to hit, they take too long to kill, and the game throws way too many of them at you. So between the constant backtracking, the bloated objective list, and the annoying new enemies, Act 2 ends up feeling like a bit of a slog. There's cool lore and a great setup here, but the pacing just doesn't hold up. We do encounter some interesting characters along the way. First, Rayne crosses paths with Von Blut, a delusional priest dressed as a Klansman, who genuinely believes the Aryan race are descendants of Atlantis, and its ruler Beliar. The boss fight against him was one of those rare times where I couldn't just instantly win using Blood Rage, as the mobile platform thing he stood on was moving back and forth across the room, so I could only do so much damage before I had to chase after him again. When Rayne moves deeper into the facility, she runs into Dr. Bathory Mengele, better known as the Butcheress. She's a hot Nazi scientist fascinated with the Damites, and wants to use them as weapons to help the Germans conquer the world. The Butcheress is another interesting boss fight as she fights exactly like Rayne, hitting fast, spinning around, and capable of keeping up with Blood Rage. As she takes damage, she'll run over to a console to hit a switch, and if you don't jump in time, Rayne gets dropped into a pit of Damites for an instant game over. Though, in a nice bit of irony, when you defeat the Butcheress, she ends up falling into the pit of Damites instead. Eventually, Rayne finds the source of where the Damites are coming from, a nest deep beneath the Nazi fortress. Here she finds another relic inside a crystal skull, the Eye of Beliar. Like the rib in Act 1, the eye embeds itself inside Rayne, though the only power she gets is the crappy extruded vision. On the way out of the fortress, she bumps into another elite GGG member, Mauler. He explains that Von Blut was wrong. Beliar isn't their ancestor, but the original devil. His position was usurped when Mephisto fell from heaven, took his throne, and then tore him to pieces, scattering his remains across the world. That's what Wolf's true goal is: dig up all the pieces of Beliar, absorb them into himself, and become all-powerful. He's already got several pieces, and he's about to dig up the most powerful part, Beliar's heart, which could potentially resurrect the original devil. After killing Mauler and the remaining GGG officers, Rayne boards a Nazi U-boat heading for Germany in order to stop Wolf before it's too late. The final act takes us to Castle Gstaad in Germany. During the excavation of the area in search of Beliar's heart, the Nazis end up clashing with a clan of ancient vampires who live here. These bloodsuckers are more primal and savage, resembling monstrous humanoid bats, though you'd be forgiven for thinking they're werewolves since they're so similar. Rayne has to navigate taking out both sides while searching for Jurgen Wolf. While she has a new list of targets to go after, Act 3 does a better job avoiding the repetition from the last act. For one, we've got an entire section where we control a German mech that looks a lot like ED-209 from RoboCop. We get a shocking twist, Mintz is still alive and working for the Nazis, before she promptly dies again. Well, alright then. Next, Rayne runs into Hedrox, a powerful mutated vampire who's basically indestructible as he can endlessly duplicate himself. He's got his claws on Beliar's heart already, but can't figure out how to absorb it like Rayne absorbed Beliar's eye. Then another Nazi boss fight, the Krieger twins, Sigmund and Simon. They flirt with Rayne mid-fight and are surprisingly pleasant fellows, despite, being Nazis. I actually felt a little sad watching one brother mourn the other, before they died too. Eventually, Rayne crosses paths with Mintz again, and this time she explains everything. She's a double agent, and had been feeding Rayne intel on Wolf's plan the entire time. She even saved Rayne back in Louisiana. They agree to stop Hedrox together, and retrieve the heart before Wolf gets to it. Unfortunately for Mintz, she dies for good this time, when Wolf ambushes her and tears out her heart before Rayne can intervene. Skipping to the final battle, Hedrox manages to fuse with the heart and promptly dies when Beliar is resurrected. He's pissed and eager to reclaim his body parts from both Wolf and Rayne, leading to a two-part final boss fight. And to be honest, it's kind of a mess. First, you've got Wolf, who is basically the Flash, with the added ability of breathing fire. He zips around the arena constantly, never staying in one place long enough to get in more than a few hits. He also has a shitload of health, making Wolf one of the few characters you can't trivialize with one burst of blood rage. Then there's Beliar, who plays the tank to Wolf's speedster. He's massive, immune to normal attacks, and even blood rage. And the only way to hurt him is by shooting at a tiny weak point, his heart. That heart gets bigger as Beliar grows, but it's still a pain to hit. And if you take too long, he just grows so large that he crushes both Rayne and Wolf, instantly ending the fight. It's not a challenging boss in the traditional sense, it's more of a clunky test of patience. You also don't get any human enemies to feed on during this fight, so healing is off the table. If you go in low on health, good luck. At the very least, there's enough firepower laying around so you can kill both bosses, and Wolf occasionally drops a gun when you damage him enough too. Once you finally manage to bring both of them down, you can sit back and enjoy the satisfying cutscene of Rayne cutting Wolf to pieces before the credits roll.
Beliar's finished. You've earned rest, Rayne, but a new evil grows more powerful even now. Brimstone Society has found your father. He must be stopped.
And that was BloodRayne. It isn't some lost masterpiece, but it doesn't need to be. What it offers is a solid, stylish slice of AA gaming. Fun combat, cool levels, and a lead character who steals the show. Slicing up Nazis and monsters with dual-arm blades, while bouncing around old castles and secret bunkers. That's still a good time. Even 2 decades later, the core gameplay holds up alright. Not perfect, and a little simple, but fun. Rayne is charismatic, sexy, and just plain fun to play as. Her attitude, look, and the way she moves through combat makes her stand out. Even if some of her powers don't really live up to the potential. Aura vision is useful, dilated perception looks cool, but stuff like extruded vision feels half-baked. And let's be real, blood rage is way too powerful. Once it's unlocked, most fights stop being challenging and start feeling like cleanup duty. Still, the game has a good sense of pace, ignoring Act 2. The level design may be simple and mostly linear, but it knows how to keep things moving. And the settings are distinct and memorable at least. Whether you're running through a dark bayou, slicing up occult Nazis in their fortress, or storming a gothic German castle, it never really overstays its welcome. It's the kind of game you can finish over a weekend and walk away satisfied. And that's really the heart of it. BloodRayne is short, sweet, and fun. It proved successful enough to get a sequel, then a couple of movies from Movable, which... and even a spin-off 2D side-scrolling game. It's not trying to redefine action games or wow you with big ideas, it's just here to give you a good time. And sometimes it's all you need. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, folks. And special thanks to my channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Augie Doggy, Bailey Morrison, Brad Taylor, Eric Lee, Gonkdroid the Critic, Skillfuse, SR Powa, Thunder Muffin, and Reckless Nerd. If you would like to support the channel, you could do so for as low as $3 a month. which will give you early access, ad-free videos, and occasionally uncut videos when I'm forced to censor things for YouTube. Higher tiers will land your name in the credits, or a verbal shoutout. Next up for the channel is the long overdue video on the Saboteur. After that, it'll be Call of Juarez, and possibly a different video idea I've been thinking about doing for a while now. Then the big video for next month is going to be on Yakuza 2. I'm hoping to maintain a momentum of 3 videos each month, while also exploring different video topics that are a little more broad and focus on multiple titles, or even focus on a specific console, like the PSP video I'm working on. The plan is to dip my toes into different content every now and then, but also avoid ignoring the videos I'm usually known for. With any luck, it'll work to expand on my writing and grow the channel even more. Again, thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment down below. Have you ever played BloodRayne? Have you ever seen its god-awful movie adaptations? Post your thoughts down below. We're on the road to 100k subs this year, so if you're new to the channel, I'd love your support and if you subscribed. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.